Hi you guys, this is Nicole from My Carolina Garden. I garden in zone 8B in southeastern North Carolina. If there is one thing I love, it is growing perennials that get bigger that I can divide up. Why do I love this? First of all, I like easy to care for plants. I like to grow my gardens and expand my landscape with things that I can grow easily. If they're overly fussy, I don't like it. But the other thing is, if I can divide them up, add them to different spaces, move things around, maybe even give them away to friends, that is my most ideal perennial. So today I want to share with you a list of my top 15 perennials that are easy to divide. So we're not talking about things where you have to get really nitty-gritty in there or be overly careful and cautious when you're dividing. These are things that are easy to divide. So let's get going. Right here is number one on my list, the daylily. The daylily gets so big and so plentiful that you can just simply stick a shovel in the ground, divide up a little piece of that plant and move it to another area. Now ideally you're going to do this early in the spring before the flowers begin to bloom, because that's going to give it its best chance to get established in the ground before it is bloom time. Backing up a bit to here, you can see I have daylilies right here and right there that are identical because they came from the same plant. I have other little poofs of it in different areas of my landscape as well. So daylilies not only are cold hardy, and I think they're hardy to zone 3, but they are not difficult to grow and they are super easy to divide. Numbers 2 and 3 on my list happen to be right next to each other here, even though only one of them is in bloom. So my number 2 is Rudbeckia, or black-eyed Susans, which I have a plume of here and I have more of it in other places here. Rudbeckia is such a great spreader that I have given this to so many friends, and then those friends have said that they've given to other friends because it just spreads so easily. Now, my number 3 is Echinacea. So this is the red salsa sombrero echinacea right here. So both are coneflower styled plants. So they get the center of them that has the seed pods when it dries out. So when it goes to seeds, this is when birds are like pecking at them and seeds drop to the ground, and these plants begin to spread, get bigger, not to mention their roots extend underneath and they also get bigger. Both of these plants are cold tolerant, hardy to zones 3 or 4. Tons of us get to enjoy them, and then tons more of us get to enjoy them as we share these amazing spreaders. Do you know the blanket flower? The blanket flower, or Gaillardia, is next on my list. This perennial is such an amazing spreader. Like, it spreads with even more ease than probably the others. When the flowers when the flower blooms expire and the heads of the flowers turn to seed, these seeds are so light and delicate, they just blow all over the place. It reseeds itself in many different areas, and when I say it is easy to dig up or divide, I am not exaggerating at all. The roots on this plant are not overly deep, so you can really even kind of scoop up gently with your hands out of the ground if you needed to do that, and add them to different areas of your landscape. I have blanket flowers everywhere because, well, the color is glorious. It's a long blooming perennial. I love having it in the garden, and because I have so many of them. Once again, this is the type of plant that I give to many people, and the loving just keeps on going and going and going. So the blanket flower. Another perennial that I want to share with you is kind of hiding right now because it's a little bit tucked into the shade. But right here I have perennial hibiscus. That is just getting moved up to reveal the bee balm that I have right here. This bee balm is yet another example of a perennial that is a great spreader. Easy to remove out of the ground, divide up, put into other places. Mwah! Another perennial that can be divided up easily that is also cold hardy, so it can be enjoyed by so many folks, are the irises. Now I have irises right here. Sadly, they're not in bloom for this example, but you can tell an iris, the iris foliage, because of the way that it's shaped. They're very flat leaves, pointy up at the top. So I have a bunch of bearded irises over here. Same sort of deal. dig them up quite easily. You're able to move them to different areas. And in fact, a lot of these plants, including the iris, does benefit from that division because it helps these plants to stay healthy and helps the blooms to come out even better and more beautiful. The Shasta daisy, which I have right here, yet another perennial that wants to be divided up. Now this area in my yard happens to be a little spot where I kind of put spare plants or things I've divided up, haven't given them away yet. They just needed a resting place for a short time. So I have some black-eyed Susans in here, I have my daisies in here, and I've had daylilies over here as well, but they have found a new home. Most of the plants that I'm showing you really do like full sun conditions, and they can tolerate some partial shade. And also most of the ones that we have gotten to at this point are pretty cold tolerant. So it's wonderful that they are not fussy, cold tolerant plants because that gives us more time to be able to allow them to grow, let them get bigger, and then we can divide them up. Over the winter, the daisies stay evergreen, real low green tufts, and then this variety happens to get super tall, but Shasta daisies. Dianthus. Dianthus is one of those perennials that comes in many different varieties. A lot of these things do come in different varieties. They can be pretty cold tolerant, but they're not going to be, not every variety is going to be a perennial in every area. So I just want to point out this Dianthus that's sitting right here in the ground. I was also able to take it out of the ground and add it into a flower pot where it's doing very well. So our divisions don't necessarily just have to be other areas where we're plopping them into the ground, but we can use them into flower arrangements, pots, and things like that as well. So the Dianthus is yet another example. And the colors that we can get from a lot of these perennials is so awesome to be able to share that around. Oh my gosh, dividing is just the best. I have two more lovelies that are right near each other. So this is the Russian sage. And if you've had Russian sage, you know how easy it is to spread. Now, another benefit to being able to divide up our perennials is garden sharing, not necessarily just giving away what we can't use, but by gaining from other folks. So the Russian sage was part of my massive garden share. I did a video on it where I shared with lots of people, and this one came from my parents' house. And then I have a Joe Pye weed here that came from my in-laws' house. So both of those things were prominent growers on each of their properties, two totally different locations, by the way. And I was able to reap the benefits of it because I was able to dig up these perennials and take them with me to add to my own garden. Canna lilies. I almost want to start out every segment that I'm doing here and saying that this is one of my favorite flowers, but I guess that would just be everything. So the canna lilies. Canna lilies really are perennial, more about to zone 7 or 8. I happen to have a whole lot of them. They are perennial here for me, so they are one of my favorites. So these guys have the rhizomes as their root system, but still super duper duper easy to divide up, and they are not overly fussy. So when you get them into the ground, sure, of course you have to keep them watered just like everything else, but they naturalize pretty darn easily. So canna lilies, this whole grouping that you see right here, they actually came from another property that I have, and they were just sitting there with nobody appreciating them. And I said, I really need to bring them to my poolside gardens. And then this area just keeps growing, 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 and I'm dividing them up and giving them away, etc. So you see, spreading the love is super easy with canna lilies. Geraniums are a perennial in some warmer climates as well. They are a little bit more of a tropical style plant, but those of us who get to keep them as perennials, super, super, super easy to divide up. You can divide up geraniums just using your hands, breaking the roots apart. And this geranium plant right here actually came as part of a larger arrangement that I had gotten on clearance. So I was able to take that geranium arrangement and divide it up into multiple pieces, and I have made multiple pot arrangements with it. I will be putting geraniums into my landscape as well and having them overwinter naturally, but geraniums are yet another super duper plant to be able to divide up. Mums. Mums are where I am going next. This arrangement has been with me since the fall. I can see we're starting to get a little bit of damage here because we've been super hot, like in the 90s each day. And so a lot of these things want some cooler temperature to really thrive. Well, the mums, this is something you can have in your ground or again in arrangements. Super easy to be able to divide up. Let me go take you into the front yard and show you some mums that I have blooming right now in this heat, looking good, that I did divide up. Here are the mums right here that I divided up. We actually have two different groupings of them at this point. So these mums have been with me for a very long time, and you can see they are surrounded by other perennials I'm talking about having divided up and moving around. These are some black-eyed Susans here, the echinacea right here, and my gardens are just full of the perennials that are easy to divide up because that's how I expand everything. So the mums right here looking awesome. Next on my list is something else I usually think of as a fall bloomer, is the asters. The asters are here being kind of surrounded by all the blanket flowers. Obviously this one was a new seed dropling that jumped in front of the asters, but right here, all of this purple. Asters also benefit from that division we've been talking about. And then we're going to end over here in the rock garden where the last perennial is this phlox. Now phlox also comes in multiple varieties. This one is the creeping moss phlox, and this one you can see just traveling all around the rocks and creeping everywhere. The roots for the phlox are not deep at all. So again, super easy. Just stick your shovel in, grab a nice chunk of the root system, and you're able to share the phlox in other areas. Hopefully this video was helpful for you and helped you see some great ways that we can expand our gardens for free using things that we already have, or perhaps we're garden sharing with our friends. Thank you for watching as always, and happy planting.